My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm 38 years old, and for the last decade, my life has been a relentless loop of quarterly reports, revenue projections, and late-night conference calls. I live in a world measured by profit margins and performance metrics. My marriage to Vanessa was no different. It was an asset I managed with the same detached logic I applied to my career. We've been married for 6 years. We met at a friend's wedding. I was a groomsman. She was a bridesmaid. We were all laughs and whispered secrets in the back of a rented limo, a fleeting fairy tale that I believed would last forever. In those early days, Vanessa seemed to understand my ambitions. She supported the long hours and the weekends spent tethered to my laptop. We made a conscious decision not to have kids, to focus on building our lives, our careers, and our financial future. Our relationship settled into a comfortable routine, but that comfort slowly calcified into emotional distance. I can admit my failures now, with the cold clarity of hindsight. Anniversaries were marked by apologetic flower deliveries from a service I had on speed dial. Dinner plans were routinely canceled in favor of a last-minute conference call with a client in Dubai. I genuinely believed that providing a life of luxury and security was my primary contribution to our marriage. Vanessa's complaints started as subtle, passive-aggressive remarks about other couples who actually traveled together, or wistful sighs when her friends posted vacation photos online. But they escalated into volcanic arguments. I remember one fight vividly. She screamed that I treated her like a roommate with benefits rather than a wife. The bedroom door slammed so hard a framed picture of us from our honeymoon fell from the hallway wall, the glass shattering on the hardwood floor. It was a perfect metaphor for our broken marriage. That night, something inside me shifted. I looked at the shattered glass and finally saw the wreckage of what we had built. I decided I had to change, to prove to her that she was more important than my career. I booked a surprise trip, a long weekend to a quaint coastal town known for its breathtaking sunsets and charming streets. It was completely out of character for me, a last-ditch effort to reconnect. I planned to surprise her that evening. I remember her face when I showed her the confirmation email. The genuine joy that replaced the months of resentment was a sight I hadn't seen in too long. She wrapped her arms around me, holding on tight. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could repair the damage and find our way back to each other. I didn't know it then, but she had already found her way to someone else. The damage, I would soon discover, was far beyond repair. The next morning, I woke to the low murmur of Vanessa's voice. It had a lightness I hadn't heard in months, animated and filled with a warmth that used to be reserved for me. I lay in bed, watching her on the phone, a small, genuine smile playing on her lips. When she finally hung up, she came to my side of the bed and sat down, her face a mask of careful, practiced optimism. "That was Rachel," she said, her tone hushed and conspiratorial. "She's going through a really dark time right now. A bad breakup. He left her out of the blue, Daniel, and she's a wreck." A familiar knot of dread tightened in my gut. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, my words flat. This wasn't about Rachel. It was about something else entirely. Vanessa took my hand, squeezing it, and her eyes were wide and pleading. "I was thinking," she began, "couldn't we include her? For the trip? It would be so therapeutic for her to get away. Just a girls' trip, you know? It'll be a chance for me to support her, for us to just be there for her." My stomach dropped. This was supposed to be our trip. A romantic reconnection, just the two of us. A chance to fix what I had broken. My hesitation must have shown on my face because her expression shifted like a coming storm. The plea was gone, replaced by the familiar coldness that had defined our last few months together. "This is exactly what I'm talking about, Daniel," she said, her voice hardening. "You never support my family. You tolerate them at holidays, but you don't actually care about them." The words hit me like a physical blow. She launched into a list of my transgressions. The time I skipped Rachel's birthday dinner for a client meeting, how I'd declined to help Rachel move because of a work deadline. The guilt settled in my stomach like stones. She was right. I had been so consumed by my own world that I had neglected not just her, but her entire family. I was a failure as a husband, a failure as a brother-in-law. "You're right," I said, the words tasting like ash. "Let's bring her." "It's a good idea. A great idea." The smile that returned to her face was blinding, a little too quick, a little too triumphant. She kissed me deeply and promised the trip would be exactly what we need. She immediately called Rachel back, her voice bubbling with excitement. I overheard fragments of the conversation from the kitchen. "He said yes, can you believe it?" she asked. "It'll be perfect, trust me," she assured her. Then came the shared laughter, a bright, bubbly sound that felt slightly conspiratorial. But I pushed the unease away, rationalizing it as paranoia born from months of marital tension. I told myself that including Rachel was a sign of my maturity, my commitment to our family, a small price to pay for Vanessa's happiness. The days leading up to the trip were the warmest our relationship had been in months. Vanessa was affectionate, planning outfits, researching restaurants. I let myself believe I had finally done something right. Rachel's presence would be a minor adjustment, a small price to pay. I was so focused on fixing the past, I didn't see the future she was already building without me. I didn't realize that in her haste to include Rachel, Vanessa was actually bringing her accomplice. The thought of that naive optimism still makes me sick to my stomach. The first day of the vacation started with a manufactured sense of normalcy. We shared a pleasant lunch overlooking the harbor, the sun warm on my skin. We browsed through quaint local shops and had casual conversations about nothing in particular. But even as we talked, a quiet tension hummed beneath the surface. I noticed Vanessa was constantly checking her phone, her thumb gliding over the screen every few minutes. I rationalized it, telling myself she was just catching up on social media or maybe it was a work email she couldn't ignore. That evening, at a quiet dinner spot, the strangeness escalated. Vanessa excused herself to the restroom, but she was gone for nearly 20 minutes. The silence that followed was suffocating. Rachel, however, filled it with a forced, overly bright conversation. She asked me detailed questions about my work, my childhood, my goals, anything to keep my eyes on her and not on the empty chair across the table. Her voice was too loud, her smile a little too wide, and I felt like I was being interviewed for a job I never wanted. Day 2 solidified the pattern. At breakfast, Vanessa dropped the first bombshell. "I need some individual space to just think and be," she said, framing it as a moment of self-care. She wanted to explore the art district alone. Before I could even protest, Rachel jumped in. "Oh, that's a great idea," she exclaimed. "Daniel and I can go to the aquarium. I heard it's fantastic." She practically grabbed my arm, her touch too familiar, too fast. I suggested we all go together, but Rachel's response was sharp. "Give her some breathing room, Daniel." "That's probably part of the problem," she said. The comment stung, echoing Vanessa's accusations from months ago. I felt the familiar guilt and agreed to her plan. The aquarium visit was a surreal blur of uncomfortable proximity. Rachel stayed physically close, constantly touching my shoulder to point out exhibits, or linking her arm through mine as we walked. Her physical contact felt both inappropriate and strategic, a constant barrier between me and the outside world. When I tried to text Vanessa a simple, "Where are you?" to check in, Rachel looked over my shoulder, her voice dripping with judgment. "You're being clingy," she declared. "That's not attractive." That afternoon at the beach, the manipulation became undeniable. Vanessa announced she needed to change into her swimsuit and headed toward the public facilities. Rachel immediately positioned herself between me and the direction Vanessa had gone, starting an elaborate, rambling story about her ex-boyfriend. 15 minutes passed, and there was still no sign of Vanessa. My heart began to pound with a slow, heavy dread. I stood up, ready to go look for her, but Rachel grabbed my wrist. Not playfully, but with a firm, vice-like grip. "Just sit down," she commanded. "You're making this awkward for everyone." The physical restraint was a jolt of ice water. This wasn't sisterly support or friendly advice. This was a deliberate act of interference, a coordinated effort. I pulled my arm away with enough force to make my point clear. Rachel stumbled back, her eyes wide with surprise. I ignored her protests and walked directly toward the public facilities. My heart wasn't pounding from exertion, but from the sudden, terrifying certainty that something was profoundly wrong. I was no longer a husband on a vacation. I was a target in a game I hadn't even known I was playing. And I was about to find the smoking gun. The public restroom facility was a concrete block tucked away behind a thicket of palm trees. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, but my steps were quiet, almost silent. My body was operating on autopilot, every sense heightened, every sound amplified. I heard her distinctive laugh, a light, breathy giggle that used to be for me, coming from the side of the building near the outdoor shower stalls. The sound was a live wire of betrayal, and it sent a jolt of icy clarity through me. The phone checking, the mysterious absences, Rachel's aggressive interference, it all clicked into place with a horrifying, sickening finality. I rounded the corner and the scene hit me like a physical blow. There she was, Vanessa, pressed against the concrete wall, her body intertwined with a man I'd never seen before. His hands were in her hair, his lips on hers, a scene of unmistakable intimate betrayal. He was younger, muscular, with the deep, effortless tan of someone who lived his life on the beach. A hot, violent rage flooded my veins, but a cold, calculated survival instinct took over. I didn't rush in. I didn't scream or punch or accuse. Instead, I pulled out my phone, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the device. I pointed the camera at them, my finger hovering over the record button. I needed evidence, not for a fight, but for a war. I recorded for 20 seconds, enough to capture their faces, enough to be legally defensible, not enough to be considered voyeuristic. I captured a picture that would shatter her carefully constructed reality. Only then did I step forward. Vanessa. My voice was a flat, cold, unrecognizable sound, empty of all the love and hope and pain I used to feel for her. They both froze, their bodies pulling apart as if tethered to a common string. Vanessa's face drained of all color, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly like a fish out of water. The man was the first to recover. He stepped forward, his fists clenched, a look of aggressive posturing on his face. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. "Her husband," I said, and the word tasted like ashes in my mouth. My stillness must have been more threatening than his aggression because he hesitated, recalculating the risk. He shoved me anyway, a weak, desperate move to salvage his pride. My response was instinctive. I pushed back hard, catching him off guard, sending him stumbling against the concrete wall with a loud thud. His bravado evaporated instantly. He grabbed his shirt, threw a contemptuous glare at Vanessa, and left without another word. Vanessa rushed towards me, her nails digging into my forearm. The pain, a welcome distraction from the cold shock spreading through me. "Daniel, please, let me explain," she begged. It's not what you think." Her voice was a desperate, high-pitched plea, the voice of someone watching their entire life crumble before their eyes. I pulled my arm away, feeling her nails drag across my skin. "I have it on video, Vanessa," I stated. "There's nothing to explain. We're done!" As if on cue, Rachel appeared from behind the palm trees. She must have followed me. She shoved my chest with both hands, her face contorted with a righteous fake outrage. "How dare you follow her?" she screamed. "You're controlling and paranoid. This is exactly why she—" I cut her off, my voice a glacial whisper. "You helped her cheat," I accused. "You kept me distracted while she f***ed another man. You're both done. I want nothing to do with either of you." I turned and walked away, the video of their betrayal a cold, heavy weight in my hand. My heart was a frozen block of ice, but in the distance, I could hear the shattering of their world. The rest of the vacation was a desolate, empty expanse of psychological warfare. I booked a separate hotel room, ignoring the confused glances from the front desk staff when I requested the change. That night, the hallway outside my door became a stage for a terrible performance. First, it was Vanessa, her voice muffled by sobs, begging through the door. "Daniel, please!" she sobbed. "Let me explain. Just one conversation, please." Then Rachel took her turn, her tactics shifting between anger, guilt, and thinly veiled threats. "You're throwing away 6 years over one mistake," she yelled. "Do you know what this will do to our parents? You'll regret this, Daniel. You'll regret being so cruel." I sat on the edge of the bed, my headphones on, the white noise a blanket that mercifully drowned them out. Sleep was a foreign concept. Instead, I spent the night on my phone, scrolling through names and reviews of divorce attorneys. I researched their specializations, their win records, their reputations. I compiled a short list. A cold, clinical list of men and women whose job it was to dismantle lives. Then I transferred the video I'd recorded to 3 separate cloud services, emailed a copy to myself, and saved it on a brand new USB drive I'd bought from the hotel gift shop. I was no longer a betrayed husband. I was a strategist, thinking like a lawyer, protecting myself from every angle, building a case that would be unbreakable. By dawn, the hallway was silent. I checked out early, took a taxi to the airport, and booked the first flight home, leaving them stranded without transportation back to the resort. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel angry. I felt nothing at all, a hollowed-out efficiency, a cold machine moving with purpose. My house felt foreign, a mausoleum of broken promises. Every corner held a memory now contaminated by her betrayal. The couch where we watched movies was now the place where she pretended to be in love with me while texting someone else. The kitchen where we cooked together was now a monument to her lies. The bed we shared felt like a tomb. I couldn't stay there. I booked a hotel room near my office, and from that anonymous place, I began dismantling my marriage with surgical precision. Monday morning, my first call was to Jordan Ward, a divorce attorney whose reviews promised aggressive representation and asset protection. I met him in his office. He watched the video once, his expression a mask of professional neutrality. "This is clear evidence of adultery," he said, his voice flat. "In this state, that affects asset distribution." "When did you discover this?" I gave him the timeline, and he nodded, a flicker of approval in his eyes. "You did everything right," he replied. "Documented evidence, no violence on your part, immediate separation. We file today. Do not communicate with her except through me. Change your locks. Separate your finances." I followed every instruction. That afternoon, I hired a locksmith and changed every entry code. I opened new individual bank accounts, transferred my direct deposit, and canceled our joint credit cards. I packed her belongings methodically, clothes, toiletries, personal items, into luggage and cardboard boxes. There was something strangely therapeutic about it, folding her clothes, sealing the boxes, creating a physical distance that reflected the emotional chasm between us. I placed everything on the front porch, protected by the overhang but clearly outside my home. Vanessa's texts and calls escalated from tearful apologies to outright panic. "Where are you?" she texted. "Why won't you answer?" "We need to talk about this." "You can't just throw away our marriage." I ignored everyone. Rachel's messages were angrier, more accusatory. "You're being childish," she wrote. "Grow up and talk to your wife." "You're not innocent in this either. You ignored her for years." I screenshotted every message, forwarding them all to Jordan Ward as evidence of harassment. The divorce filing was submitted on Wednesday. Jordan Ward called with an update later that day. "She was served the papers at her parents' house," he informed me. "She's requesting a meeting. Wants to discuss reconciliation." I advised her attorney that's not happening, but she's insistent on coming to the house. I considered it for a moment. Letting her come was a dangerous game, but a necessary one. I had to see her, to see the reality of what she had done, to finally sever the last threads of our life together. "Let her come," I said, my voice as cold as the divorce papers in her hands. "I'll be there, but I'm not discussing anything. She can just pick up her belongings." It was time for the final act. They arrived on Saturday morning. Vanessa, Rachel, and their parents, Margaret and Robert. I watched them pull into the driveway in Robert's SUV, the 4 of them emerging like an intervention team. Vanessa's eyes were swollen from crying. Rachel's expression was defiant, and their parents looked exhausted and confused. I opened the front door before they could even knock, standing in the threshold like a physical barrier between them and the life they no longer belonged to. "Your belongings are on the porch," I said, my voice flat, emotionless. Vanessa immediately started to cry, reaching for me. "Daniel, please," she begged. "We have to talk about this." "I made a mistake, but you can't just—" Her mother, Margaret, interrupted, her voice taking on the gentle but firm tone of someone used to smoothing over family conflicts. "Daniel, sweetheart," she said, "whatever happened, I'm sure we can work through this together. Marriage takes effort from both people." The assumption that I was equally to blame ignited a cold fire in my gut. I wasn't just tired anymore. I was furious. "Would you like to see what happened, Margaret?" I asked. "Would that help clarify things?" I pulled out my phone. The screen already pulled up to the video. Robert, her father, stepped forward, his face reddening. "How dare you throw my daughter out like trash?" he bellowed. 6 years of marriage and you can't even have a conversation like an adult? I turned the phone screen toward them and pressed play. The video was brief but unmistakable. The timestamp, the location, Vanessa's face, the intimate embrace, the other man, the sound of my wife's laughter, that distinctive, breathy, intimate sound she hadn't made for me in months, echoed in the tense silence. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth, and Robert's expression transformed from anger to shock, then to something like utter disgust. The slap happened so fast I barely registered it. Robert's hand connected with Vanessa's cheek with a sharp crack that seemed to echo off the surrounding houses. "How could you do this to him?" he roared at her. "To this family?" Margaret was sobbing now, clutching her husband's arm. Vanessa held her cheek, stunned into silence, a bright red mark already forming on her pale skin. Rachel, ever the accomplice, stepped between them, defensive. "Dad, stop!" she yelled. "You don't understand. Daniel was never there. He worked constantly. He neglected her. She was lonely." My voice cut through her lie like a shard of ice. "Rachel helped her," I stated. "She kept me distracted on the beach while Vanessa met him. She knew about the affair. She enabled it. The information landed like a bomb." Robert turned to Rachel and his expression shifted to something beyond anger. It was pure betrayal, disappointment, and disgust. "You helped your sister destroy her marriage?" he asked, his voice shaking. "What kind of person does that?" Rachel's defiance crumbled. "She was miserable," she insisted. "I was helping her. Someone had to—" Margaret cut her off, her voice shaking with disbelief. "You helped her commit adultery?" she asked. "You participated in destroying a marriage. How could you?" The argument escalated rapidly. Vanessa turned on Rachel. "You said you'd be careful," she screamed. "You said he'd never notice?" "This is your fault," Rachel fired back, her face twisted with a rage I had never seen before. "My fault?" she yelled. "I didn't someone else. I just tried to help you and now you're throwing me under the bus?" Old resentments surfaced like infected wounds. Robert brought up Rachel's history of poor judgment, past instances of family manipulation. Margaret accused Vanessa of always being selfish, always taking shortcuts. The sisters screamed at each other, Vanessa blaming Rachel for sloppy execution, Rachel blaming Vanessa for dragging her into your mess. It became physical when Rachel shoved Vanessa, who retaliated by grabbing a handful of Rachel's hair. Robert had to physically separate them while Margaret stood frozen, crying helplessly. I watched it all from my doorway, unmoved. This was the bed they made. This was the chaos, the destruction they chose. Robert finally turned back to me, his face aged by the last 10 minutes. "I'm sorry," he said. "We had no idea. I'm ashamed of both of them." I nodded, not unkindly. "Take the boxes," I said. "Take them both. I don't want anything from any of you." They loaded the SUV in tense silence, the sisters refusing to even look at each other. As the vehicle pulled away, boxes stacked haphazardly in the back, a family fractured beyond repair contained in one uncomfortable space, I felt nothing like victory, just exhaustion and a profound sense of relief. The divorce was finalized in a quiet 3 months. Jordan Ward, my attorney, called with the good news. The evidence of adultery and my careful documentation of Vanessa's betrayal resulted in a settlement heavily in my favor. I retained the house, my retirement accounts remained intact, and there would be no alimony. Vanessa signed everything without a fight. Her attorney, as Jordan Ward explained, had advised that fighting would only make things worse and far more expensive. She had nothing left to bargain with. I heard about Vanessa and Rachel through mutual acquaintances I hadn't yet gotten around to filtering from social media. The sisters' relationship, I learned, had imploded completely. Margaret confided to a friend who in turn told one of my colleagues that Vanessa and Rachel hadn't spoken since that confrontation in my driveway. Family gatherings had become impossible. Either Vanessa attended or Rachel did, but never both. Holiday celebrations fractured into separate events, doubling the obligation and halving the joy. Their parents, exhausted by the whole ordeal, attempted to organize one reconciliation dinner. According to reports, it lasted 20 minutes before Rachel screamed at Vanessa, "I lost everything because of you. My parents look at me like I'm garbage." Vanessa fired back, "You were supposed to keep him distracted. You got sloppy and ruined everything." The revelation that Rachel's role was premeditated, not spontaneous, caused Margaret to walk out, unable to even look at her daughters. A physical altercation followed, requiring other family members to pull them apart. That was the last time they were in the same room. Rachel eventually moved to another city, cutting contact with the entire family. Vanessa lives alone now, working a job she hates, her social circle decimated by the scandal that spread through the community. The beach boyfriend, as expected, disappeared the moment complications emerged. The exact kind of man who would participate in an affair with a married woman on vacation. I don't celebrate their misery, but I don't mourn it either. I've rebuilt my life with deliberate intention. I kept the house, but I renovated it, giving it new paint and new furniture, erasing the physical memories of her. I started therapy, processing not just the betrayal, but the workaholism that, while it didn't justify her infidelity, did contribute to the emptiness in our marriage. I'm dating someone new now casually. She appreciates my honesty about my past and my commitment to not repeating those same patterns. Sometimes I still think about that moment on the beach. The way Rachel grabbed my wrist, the sudden, terrifying certainty that something was catastrophically wrong. I am grateful I trusted my instincts, documented everything, and protected myself legally. The betrayal hurt. It still hurts sometimes, in quiet moments, but the outcome could have been so much worse if I had acted emotionally instead of strategically. I've learned that justice doesn't always feel triumphant. Sometimes it just feels like survival, like protecting yourself from people who saw you as an obstacle rather than a partner. That's enough. It has to be. I don't know if Vanessa and Rachel ever reconciled. I deleted them from my life completely. But I know one thing. I saved myself, and that's the only person I was ever responsible for saving. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.